American Sports Cavalcade proudly presents NHRA drag racing from the Mac Tools Gatornationals in sunny Gainesville, Florida. If you're looking for parity in the world of motorsports, look no further than NHRA's Top Fuel Dragster category. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Evans. Not only has there not been a repeat winner in the 95 season, there hasn't been a repeat winner since Labor Day weekend of 94 at the U.S. Nationals. Now, as you look at the 8 drivers who have won without a repeat, tell me, do you think the streak will end here at the Mac Tools Gatornationals? Yep, I do too. A lot of quality there. I can't imagine one of those cars not being in the winner's circle, but then you just never know. It could be Larry Dixon that breaks the streak, or the car that Ralph Shaheen is with.
It was just 3 years ago that Kenny Bernstein stunned the motorsports world by running the first ever 300-mile-an-hour pass right here at the Gatornationals. Since then, the NHRA record books point out that 288 runs have been made at over 300 miles an hour. In qualifying, Kenny added another triple century speed lap as he laid down a blistering 306. Crew chiefs like Dale Armstrong, who tuned the first 300-mile-an-hour run, are saying 300 is no longer a black art.
With the equipment that's available today with the stronger magnetos and just better equipment, it's getting to be a 300-mile-an-hour run is getting to be pretty normal. I mean, it's not as exciting as it was the very first time, obviously.
There's a lot of people that can run 300 miles an hour. We don't deliberately try to run real fast. We work more on ETs than the speed, but the 300-mile capability is just virtually there almost any time.
The 310 is a different matter, but 300 is pretty much commonplace anymore.
In round 1, King Kenny found the Gator magic was gone as he lost a tire-smoking battle against Eddie Hill. And while the first man to break 300 is out, Bob Fry is in the pit of the pro stock driver most likely to break the 200-mile-an-hour mark.
Ralph, if there's anything such as a home court advantage in pro stock racing, Warren Johnson has it here at Gainesville Raceway. Now consider the numbers. The 2-time Winston champ has won Gainesville 4 times in a row. But for 1995, you know how many wins he's got? 0. Although he has qualified number 1 4 times. Now 4 might be the big number. 4 wins in a row at Gainesville, 4 number 1 qualifiers in a row. He'd like to go 4 rounds here today because Warren wants to change that 3 to a 1. In round 1, Warren Johnson met Bruce Allen, who was at the wheel of the rear in Morrison Pontiac. Warren qualified at 7 seconds flat, and if anything was an indication that the professor of pro stock was here to win again, this run was it. 695 at 198 miles an hour. 1 round down, 3 to go for WJ, the number 1 qualifier at all 4 national events this season. Sounds like we're ready for more racing action, so let's go back and join Steve Evans.
And let's kick it off with another category of NHRA competition capable of topping 300 miles an hour. Nitro funny cars. In fact, John Force in qualifying set an all-time Gainesville Raceway track record at 301 miles per hour. Well, Ralph, we're looking at WHIT BAZEMORE, who is still trying to win his first NHRA national event, but has shown some real flashes of brilliance recently, running down in the teens and the O's.
This is the one car I think a lot of people are waiting to get into victory lane. You pointed out at the top of the show, top fuel drivers have been doing a lot of repeating. This is one funny car driver we're waiting to get his first win.
Tom Hoover, well, he's won a number of NHRA national events in the Pioneer Electronics Dodge, looking for his first Gators title. WHIT BAZEMORE with Rob Flynn as his crew chief. They've got a little better backing this year from their sponsor, Fast Orange. And believe it or not, money can translate into victory. Not always, but it doesn't hurt. About 5,000 horsepower, that's our estimate of these cars these days. There's no dyno in the world capable of really measuring it. And of course, the tricky part with funny cars is getting traction. They don't have the long wheelbase, they don't have some of the aerodynamics enjoyed by the top fuel cars. So what happens inside that bell housing with the slippery clutch is all important to these cars. Hoover's car hesitated right off the starting line. We heard something possibly go wrong with BAZEMORE's machine as the RPMs came way up before the finish line. but he wins it at 5:36, only 269 miles an hour.
Here's a look at Chuck Getchels, the man who qualified 9th at 5:26 at a 281 mile an hour pass. And John Force, #1 qualifier. What else can you say? 5:06, 301 miles an hour, Steve.
So far, John Force is just strangling the 16-car qualified field. The winner here goes into the Final Four. Well, you were on board with ETCHELLS. You could see that car was shaking violently. He shuts it off. John Force, a very nice 5:17, but when you look at the speed, only 269 miles an hour. Obviously, he shut it off way early.
Here's Cruz PEDREGON getting ready to go. He's going to be matching up against Casey Spurlock.
PEDREGON gave new team owner Joe Gibbs a great present at the opening race of the year, winning the Winter Nationals. Here he's qualified #3 to 5:16 and beat Kenji Okazaki in round #1. Casey Spurlock, he likes this Gainesville track. He was runner-up, made the final round last year, only to fall to John Force. I think, Ralph, this is one of the prettiest cars in drag racing in the far lane. Certainly McDonald's car is good looking, but Spurlock's the Fruit of the Loom special, really truly unique, a graphic artist's dream.
It just absolutely jumps out at you no matter where you are in the grandstand. You can't miss it.
Well, one thing we couldn't miss either, Spurlock threw this one away with a red light over in the far lane, and that red light was very, very close. He may have even seen the yellow, but was staged a little deeper, was just so darn good that he was his own worst enemy. So PEDREGON advances at 5:56, 183.
Still more room in the Final Four, and one more car will come out of this pair, Al Hoffman and Dean Scusa. Dean Scusa, the body being lowered over his car, and you might notice it's no longer yellow, a new paint job for him. He'll match up against the beautifully prepared Western Auto entry of Al Hoffman.
That's what it used to look like when it was yellow. Don't worry, we'll get a new shot of it, Dean. He qualified #7 at 5:23, beat Jeff Ahrens in round #1. Now, Al Hoffman, oh, Al, you don't look happy, buddy. He should. He qualified #2 at a 5:14 and almost made another 300-mile-an-hour run. The body is up on the Western Auto car. That is standard operating procedure for Tom Anderson and crew. They change some fuel valves, turn on another magneto. All kinds of different things happen depending on the racetrack. And that was Don Scusa, Dean's dad, making a final check of that machine. They've made one final round in 2 years of professional drag racing. That was last year at Atlanta. Let's watch and listen. Whoa, you were on board with Al Hoffman when Dean Scusa just scooted around. Lance Larson, his crew chief, just loves seeing his guy take out the #2 qualifier with a 5:23.
The Final Four is set and ready to go. Don Force will match up against WHIT BAZEMORE. Force, of course, having the lane choice. And the other pair, Dean Scusa, getting better and better every week, coming up against Cruz PEDREGON with the lane choice.
On the pad right now, Pro Stocks. No better drag racing in the entire NHRA spectrum than the factory hot rods. 2,350 pounds, pumped gasoline, 500 cubic inch engines with 2 giant 4-barrel carburetors. And this is the 2-time Winston champion, Darrell Alderman for Team Mopar. He'll be up against Jerry ECKMAN, the Pennzoil Pontiac, a resurging Jerry ECKMAN, Ralph.
He's been getting better and better every week, hasn't he? We talked about in the beginning of the year at the Winter Nationals that we really thought this would be a good year for Jerry ECKMAN, rebounding off a horrendous season in '94. He started to show good signs at the Winter Nationals and has carried right on through, right down here to sunny Florida.
Research and development is everything with the Pro Stock cars. You make your power at the shop, you come to the racetrack to find out if it works. Whoa, and did Jerry ECKMAN ever give Darrell Alderman a scare? ECKMAN 710 to Alderman's quicker, and he needed it 703 to 196 miles an hour. The Glidden family qualified 3 cars in the top half of the field. In fact, son Billy was qualified #2 until he ran up against this guy, Larry Morgan, who took him out with a whole shot victory in round #1 in the Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile. Now, Rusty Glidden is the only surviving member of the family to make it here to round number 2. That's why you see his father out on the starting line trying to give him a hand. Larry Morgan wants another Glidden out of here, giving the kid something to think about, taking his time. Who's going to break? It's Morgan. Ooh, Rusty Glidden red lights in the near lane. In fact, it wasn't even close. Ignore which car crosses the finish line first because he was eliminated by leaving too soon. Larry Morgan, the Oldsmobile, goes to the final 4.
Never feel guilty when you get yourself a win as you go inside with Scott Jeffrey on. There's a look at Scott. He qualified number 3 at a 7:05 at 194 miles an hour. He put Bob Glidden on the trailer in round 1. Mark Powick, he qualified number 6 at a 7:065, 195 miles an hour. He got a win over Jim Yates in round number 1.
Not only did Jeffrey on in the near lane put Glidden on the trailer in round 1, he ran a 6.98 to do it, joining the Holly 6-second Pro Stock Club.
Another staging battle?
Looks like it. The Dodge moves in first. Whoa, and it's the Cowboy, Mark Powick, upsetting the Dodge of Jeffrey on 7:07, beats a 7:03. This is a driver's race today.
Could it be that we're starting to see a trend that maybe there is an Achilles heel to the Dodges? We saw Alderman almost get beat earlier today, and now Mark Powick gets the best of Scott Jeffrey on. Powick did just what ECKMAN did. He got him with a hole shot at the front end of the racetrack. 4:61 reaction time, beat Jeffrey off the line. The difference was here, Powick had enough to stay in front of him at the far end of the racetrack and take the win over Scott Jeffrey on. The margin of victory, just 0.09 of a second for a very ecstatic Mark Powick. Blaine Johnson getting set to go with Top Fuel, but we got more Johnsons to go. Pro Stock Johnsons when we come back.
We are back at the Mac Tools Gatornationals, Gainesville, Florida, with the final race of round number 2 in Pro Stock, and this has really captivated the fans. Warren Johnson, number 1 qualifier, Performance Parts Oldsmobile. In the far lane will be his own son, Kurt. In round number 1, Warren not only beat Bruce Allen, but he ran a 6:95 at 198 miles an hour to process. Kurt qualified number 8, middle of the pack at 7:08, 195, so he is in very tough here against his dad. And even though both of these cars, the Mark Christopher Oldsmobile and Warren's car, come out of the same shop in Sugar Hill, Georgia, Greg Anderson will tell you, the fix is never in. Father and son always race for it and race hard.
So far, we've had 3 Pro Stock staging battles, Steve. How much of that do you think today is because Buster Couch is not in charge of the tree today?
His son Mike is out there. All the drivers respect him. I think it's just something where you've got an inequity in the pair and one guy's got nothing to lose. I wouldn't expect to see that here, but I could be wrong. They're both pre-staged. Nobody's moving. Warren finally bumps it into the beams. Kurt taking his time. Mike Couch says, move it in. He does. Warren Johnson becomes the first ever Pro Stock driver to lose with a 6-second elapsed time. 6:99 is defeated by his son Kurt, a 7:04. Watch the car in the far lane.
If you're going to get into a staging duel, don't do it with the guy that pays your allowance. That's not a good move. It worked for Kurt Johnson. He caught his dad sleeping. I think Warren was so frustrated that his son got into a staging battle with him. He couldn't believe it. It cost him at the light just a tenth, but it made the difference. Warren Johnson loses with a 6:99 at 197 miles an hour. That's unbelievable. It sets up our final 4 as we get ready for the Pro Stock Finals. Kurt Johnson against Darrell Alderman. Alderman has lane choice. Larry Morgan and Mark Powick with Powick getting the lane choice. Boy, what a busy midway we got going on here at the Gatornationals. Autographs and souvenirs. A beautiful day at the races. Take your seats, though, because Top Fuel round number 2 is getting ready to shake up your insides.
Yep, anchor down the old TV set. It may wobble right off the table. These are the ultimate ground pounders, the kings of the sport, the fastest accelerating vehicles in the world, and I'm all out of platitudes. And this is Cory McCLENATHAN in the McDonald's Dragster. You saw his teammate earlier, CRUZ PEDREGON in Pontiac. Now it's Cory's chance with a 300-mile-an-hour, 4-second contender. Mike Dunn qualified number 2 with a 4.77, beat Pat Dakin in round 1. And the La Victoria Salsa car already has one victory. That came at Houston just a few weeks ago.
Amazingly, Cory Mack hasn't won a national since Topeka in 1994.
That truly is amazing, considering the resources and the talent on that team. Crew Chief Lee Beard, it's frustrating them. You just can't let it get to you. You got to just do what you do and hope for the very best. Ooh, and Cory Mack almost let that one get away. Mike Dunn had him until he lost traction over in the far lane. You saw some wisp of smoke off the tire. That's all it took. 43 won it.
Take a look just over the right shoulder of the La Victoria crew member. That's how late Cory Mack was. You see Mike Dunn is already checking out of the box, and Cory Mack is just beginning to lead. As the tires haze on Dunn's car, Cory Mack musters a 483 at 303. Next pair coming up. Larry Dixon is going to match up against Joe Amato, and a bit of an up and down season for Amato, Steve. He's had flashes of brilliance, but not the consistency he's looking for.
He's had flashes of fire more than brilliance, exploding tires. It's been a wild season, one without a win. Joe Amato, the 5-time champion, is struggling, but he's up against the phenom everybody is talking about, Larry Dixon, the rookie in Don Perdome's car. He won already this year at Phoenix. The Valvoline car, the Miller Genuine Draft car, side by side. This is second round of Top Fuel action. Amato, red lighted, and then smoked the tires. Not much else can go wrong unless you smack the wall. And Ralph, as you know, the guy in the near lane, Texan Michael BROTHERTON, is unofficially the quickest Top Fuel driver in history. Magic conditions on a May summer evening in Englishtown, New Jersey last year saw him run a 4.69, the only one ever below 4.70. Couldn't back it up for a national record, but we all know he did it.
Mike Dunn even said that at this racetrack here, Steve, if we had those same types of conditions, he figures a 465 at 315 miles an hour would be possible. I don't think we have quite those conditions today, but we could see some good times out of these Top Fuel cars.
With no cloud cover, this racetrack, in my opinion, will not yield that kind of performance. The rubber is just a little too kind of greasy out there. The sun cooks it. Scott KALITTA has not had a win in 1995. He qualified number 5 here and beat Ron Capps in round number 1. His opponent, Michael BROTHERTON, he qualified better than KALITTA, number 4, and he sent Tommy Johnson Jr. back to Iowa. Problems with the BROTHERTON car.
Boy, they're swarming all over the backside of the cockpit. Look at the fuel spewing out, Steve.
Now, sometimes you can grab a rag and tie it around it, but this looks like it's under pressure. And there's two big safety factors here. One is obviously fire, the potential of that, and the other is the driver losing control in that liquid. Oh, they have shut off Michael BROTHERTON. What a huge break for Scott KALITTA. That is nitromethane. That's about $3 worth of nitromethane right there. He won't shut it off. Scott KALITTA will run it as hard as he can. Ooh, did he dodge a bullet? In fact, he was a bullet. You saw the blower explode, the restraining straps holding it on top of the engine, but there's a tremendous amount of damage to the KALITTA car.
There you see poor Michael BROTHERTON checking out the fuel problem with his car. Smart move to shut that one down, but watch this here as Scott KALITTA's blower, kaboom! Steve?
Well, Scott, you never want to explode a supercharger, but if you have to do it on a single run.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, maybe we're going to get lucky here on this. I don't know. I heard the cylinder out, and then the first thing I thought was, oh, lane choice, who knows? I don't know who I was running, but then about the time I quit thinking about that, that's when it blew up. And then they didn't turn the computer on and make it worse.
Ooh, that does make it worse. No data, not much help.
Not a whole lot of parts left either. Look at the mess here. Fluids dripping out, steam pouring out. Not good. Eddie Hill and Blaine Johnson are the next two to match up, and Eddie Hill loves this racetrack at the Gator Nationals. 5 out of the last 7 years, Steve, Eddie the Thrill Hill has appeared in the final round.
And he's won 3 of those. In the near lane, there's a guy who's on a hot streak of sorts, and that is Blaine Johnson, the Trevor's Tool entry from Santa Maria, California. He has qualified in the #1 spot 3 times, including right here in Gainesville. His father Everett out there backing him up. He needs to parlay that into a victory. And over the years, if you look, statistically, the #1 qualifier doesn't win that often. They seem to kind of be on the edge of smoking the tires. He beat KALITTA in round #1. The 1993 Winston champ, Eddie Hill, well, he ran a 486 to qualify, and as we showed you earlier, barely squeaked by Kenny Bernstein when Bernstein smoked the tires more than Eddie did. Alan Johnson says, "Get up, Blaine. My work is done." In fact, a lot of the money that goes into fielding this car comes from selling Allen cylinder heads. Even dropping at least 1 cylinder on the left-hand side. Blaine Johnson runs a 489, and unlike Scott KALITTA, didn't blow a supercharger doing it. Speed off at 295. Eddie Hill, 494, struggling, 288.
Here's your final 4 pairing. Corey Mack will match up against the hot rookie Larry Dixon. Corey gets the lane choice. And Blaine Johnson will go up against Scott KALITTA, with KALITTA getting the lane choice. Steve's down at the far end with Blaine.
Boy, Blaine, that was a whale of a drag race until your brother's horsepower took over about half track.
Yeah, boy, I started smoking tires out there, and I pedaled it once real quick. It's never worked before, but it worked that time. Hooked back up and took off.
You've been hurting some crankshafts in this car, and that's expensive.
Yeah, amazingly enough, the last run we made, we ran the same motor this run.
All right, progress.
If Blaine could win today, he would continue that no repeat winner streak. Back in the pits, Force crew readying for the final 4 under the watchful eye of Bernie Federle. Pro Stock's next.
Kate is back at the Mac Tools Gator Nationals, and let me answer some female viewer mail. Larry Dixon is not married. Larry Dixon has never been married. Larry Dixon doesn't even have a steady girlfriend, so take your best shot. All right, from Larry Dixon, let's go to Larry Morgan as Pro Stock continues.
The first pair is Larry Morgan and Mark Powick, and Morgan is the quickest guy out of the box on a regular basis, Steve. So to beat him, you've got to be lightning fast.
Well, both of these guys are only in the Final Four because of that whole shot technique, getting off the starting line quicker than your opponent. So this could be a real dandy. It'd be very interesting to see what happens on the starting line. We have seen so many of these, well, late stages. Let's not call them staging wars. And technically, if one driver gets both those stage lights on, the other driver has, well, let's say 5 seconds tops to get into the beam, or the starter can hit the switch and throw the red light. We've seen Buster Couch when he was out on the starting line. We saw him do it last year to Warren Johnson. We saw him do it to Steve Schmidt a couple of times. They're not afraid to do that. So the driver walks a real tightrope if you decide to play that game. Let's watch and see. They're talking to each other with the throttles. They're going to run out of gas. Whoa, who do you think won it? Nope, you're wrong. Mark Powick won it in the near lane. A 709 beats Morgan's 713. Powick 196 miles an hour. Maybe Morgan could have got it, except he got a little out of the groove at the far end, Ralph.
Big hole shot for Larry Morgan, a 452 to a 498 reaction time, but the difference came at the far end of the racetrack. Mark Powick got the Summit machine up on its tires and moving all the way through the speed traps at the far end. A 196 mile an hour pass with a 709 for Mark Powick. It betters a 713 at 194 for Morgan. Here's how you figure out the margin of victory. The elapsed time plus the reaction time gives you your total time. You subtract it. 1/1000th of a second was the difference, Steve.
Folks, you might want to get back from your television sets. The Cowboy may come right into your living room.
Woo-hoo! I love it, Steve. That's for all the people at Summit Racing Equipment in Akron, Ohio. They've been supporting us through thick and thin, and Proud to be here in the final, man. It's a great race to do with that.
You had to chase Morgan down.
I figured he left on me a little bit, but I was coming, and I just hoped that Dave Butner and the crew had enough steam in this baby, and they did.
7:09.
He's happy. You can be sure of that. The Wayne County Dodgers have had a bit of a tough day here at the Gatornationals. We've seen one of them go away already. Darrell Alderman qualified 13th, but he is in the Final Four. And he's going to have to go up against Mr. Late Stager, Kurt Johnson. He survived not only beating his dad and the racetrack, but survived a scolding probably back in the truck after.
I think it was a little worse than that. But anyway, that's another story. Alderman knows that when he's got the Dodge running quicker than his opponent, they're probably almost always going to make him stage first. A lot of drivers, Mike Sullivan will tell you, crew chief, it's a mental thing. If you can stage last, they feel like they're maybe more prepared.
I guess when you got to go up against Darrell Alderman, you just come up with absolutely anything. You just reach as deep back in the memory banks of tricks to come up with something to get past him. Think Kurt will wait a little bit longer here again?
I think Kurt will do everything but shoot his tires out. Uh-huh. What are you gonna do, Darrell? I'm on the stage, Steve. As you saw, Kurt Johnson suddenly fell back. A problem with the car, no problem for Darrell Alderman, who is maybe a little shocked that he's going into the final round. 7:03, 197.
I think we finally saw a performance out of this Wayne County Dodge of Darrell Alderman's that matches up with what we're used to seeing out of him. He finally put together a good run, a good reaction time, not really a 470, but the performance was there, a 7:03 at 197 miles an hour. That made the difference as Kurt Johnson's car went away at half track. Alderman still put a good number together. He moves on to the final pair. Darrell Alderman and Mark Powick with Alderman getting the lane choice in our Pro Stock final, Steve.
Look at the smoke billowing over the rear wing. In fact, earlier I had a chance to take a good look at CRUZ PEDREGON's car from that department. Upset the aerodynamics of a funny car at high speed, and the results can be, well, disastrous. Remember last May in Memphis, Tennessee, Jerry Caminito had the spill plate come off of his car at terminal speed, and the resulting crash, well, the worst we ever saw. Almost cost him his life. Take a look at CRUZ PEDREGON's McDonald's car. They're not taking any chances. The spill plate is attached with no less than 17 bolts. We know how weight conscious these teams are. This is not a place to save weight. What about all the flex at 300 miles an hour? Well, these very high tensile strength cables pretty much take care of that. One here, and one over there. And as far as the back part of the wing where the real downforce is, well, nothing is going to break this rod. It is super strong. In fact, this whole installation about as safe as it gets.
Crew walks over to CRUZ PEDREGON's car, making some final adjustments. Bob Brandt looks in at CRUZ, some hand signals. They're about set to go. Dean Scuz's crew ready to go. His father Don gives him the wave that he's set. He'll help him stage, and we'll be underway in the first of our final four pairs.
Very difficult to see out of some of these funny cars where the blowers are real high, and that just helps them get to that pre-stage beam. Then you're on your own. And you won't see a lot of staging wars with the nitro cars, occasionally maybe, but usually you don't want to build too much heat. That makes more power. More power means more tire smoke potentially. It was all Pedregon until three-quarter track. The Scuzza crew loves seeing the tire smoke off of the McDonald's Oldsmobile. It means they are in their second ever final round.
A lot of clutch dust will pour out of the back of these machines as they both leave the starting line at about the same reaction time. A 494 to a 495 with Scuzza getting the advantage. The telltale sign came at the halfway point. Watch the tires boil up on Pedregon's machine. The McDonald's car goes up in smoke as Cruiser fights for traction and control of the car. Scuzza powers past at a 285 mile an hour run, 527, and he talks to Steve.
Crew Chief Lance Larson deserves a pat on the back for this one because, Dean, you didn't go up there and beat yourself and smoke the tires.
That's the thing, Steve. You had that exactly right. This thing just went down there. Cruz was out on me for a little while, and I just went right by him, and I'm like, Lancito, my man!
You've been in one final round before. Is this equal?
Well, I think I know I'm going to be running here. We'll just have to wait and see. But, yeah, I mean, that one final round experience, I think it's really going to help me out, Steve. Thanks, man. Go Quick Shine. Thank you.
Nice to see good success for Dean, not only in the season, but now with the new sponsorship on board the race car. It's a good way to start off that association.
You know, on the chance that you're sitting home in your Barco lounge, you're thinking you just stab and steer these cars, you don't. Here's Bob Fry earlier.
As the crowd watched Whit Bazemore's team get the fast orange car ready for the next round of competition, I said, Whit, how you feeling? He said, I don't know. I haven't been this far in a long while. Whit, let me take you back to that first round of competition. Magnificent job of driving.
Well, thanks, Bob. You know, it's all part of the game. It's a team effort. The guys get the car ready for me, and they're giving me a car that right now we don't have the consistency that we're looking for, but they're giving me a car. We're getting to the other end, and I've got to fight it a little bit, but that's part of the job sometimes.
He fought it big time in the first 2 rounds, and that's why they pay the drivers the big bucks, you know?
Another thing, Ralph, that these funny car guys are fighting almost to a man is clutch problems. They've reached the point that these 4-disc clutches really don't want to stay in these cars more than 1 or 2 runs, and that is frightfully expensive and could be a little on the dangerous side were it not for the explosion through bell housing.
And nobody knows how to fix it right now. Everybody's searching for the answer. He who finds the answer will dominate in this division.
And make a lot of money selling it. Bazemore smokes the tires in that far lane even earlier than Pedregon did. Force goes to the final at 5:24, 238 miles an hour. And I'll tell you, there's some clutch problems with that car. You can almost smell it.
Take a look at them launching off the line. Force was quicker with a 5:45 reaction time. Bazemore not too slow with a 5:60. But watch Whit's car. Right there, see the sparks coming out of the bottom and then the smoke out of the tires? Steve, he's got big problems there. Take a look at it from another angle. Watch the car in the far lane. You can see the sparks starting to trail off the bottom of the car. The tires haze up. And Force and Holzschott go on to the final pair. He will, of course, match up with Dean Scusa, and John gets the lane choice. Steve's with him.
Something bad was happening inside John Force's Pontiac. That's a fire extinguishing agent you see all over his boots. What's going on, bud?
Yeah, you know, fire scares you, but boom, she just kind of blasted, and it was really the clutch. The clutch locked up in her. I'm lucky I got around Baze down there because it was plenty close there, buddy.
You got the Scusa boy the last time you met.
He's a good kid. We're just going to work. I told Coyle backing up from the burnout, the clutch was smoking. It's still smoking, about to blow up. But that's what it's all about. So in case we don't come back, I mean, we'll come back, but Castrol, boys, you know who you are. We'll be there.
He knows who they are now. If he can just figure out what's wrong with the clutch, look at the smoke pouring out of it. Cory Mack, he's one of the ones into the final 4 of Top Fuel. He'll be matching up against Larry Dixon when we come back to the Gators.
We are back, Gainesville Raceway, North Central Florida, the 1995 Mack Tools Gatornationals, the final 4 of Top Fuel. Burnouts completed. You're looking at the Joe Gibbs-owned, Cory McCLENATHAN-driven Top Fuel dragster. Crew Chief Lee Beard out in front of the car. Everything rattling, everything vibrating under the strain of some 5,000 horsepower. And there's Larry Dixon Jr. Ralph Shaheen, this is only his 4th race ever in a Top Fuel career, and he's got a shot at his 2nd final round.
It's just phenomenal, the year Larry Dixon's had. We need to give a tip of the hat to the crew that is setting that car up because they're making it very easy for this inexperienced driver to get down to the far end of the racetrack.
If there's such a thing as a natural talent in drag racing, Larry Dixon is it. Cory Mack is out of it. Larry Dixon is in it. Oh my. Whoa, I don't think anybody expected a 478 at this time of the day on this sun-drenched racetrack. A speed of 296 miles an hour. Wes certainly getting close to that 300.
The story of this one is in the near lane. Watch Corey Mack. As soon as he gets into the throttle, about 1.5 feet out of the box, the tires smoke right up. Steve's with our winner.
What a story. This guy's only been in 4 races in his whole life, and he's going to his second final round, and he won at Phoenix. Wow.
That's what I got to say.
Nice pass, 478.
Great. You know, I mean, it pulled all the way down, and can't say enough about Snake, Wes Cerny, and the whole Miller crew. They're doing a hell of a job.
It's going to cool off a little bit and run better.
That's up to Wes. Ain't my job.
And Wes doesn't meddle with his either, I can tell you that. All right, who's he going to race in the final round? Let's find out.
It's going to be one of those two, Scott KALITTA or Blaine Johnson. Blaine Johnson in the near lane in the Travers Tool entry. It's Scott KALITTA on the far side of the racetrack. That car really starting to come around a little bit, Steve.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, Blaine Johnson, as Ralph, you pointed out, is the only car left in competition that could extend this no-repeat streak to 9 races over 2 seasons. You know, an awful lot of top fuel drivers currently started in the alcohol ranks. Blaine Johnson stayed there a long time.
You know, I love it when the crowd kind of choreographs me and what I'm going to do. A couple of these fellows behind me said, hey, I'll bet these guys are glad to see a crowd standing around watching them race. Well, they are. These guys happen to be the Johnsons. Blaine Johnson, his brother Alan, and his father are still looking good in Top Fuel Eliminator. Now, Blaine Johnson figures that he knows this track well. He won his first race in Top Alcohol Dragster here in 1988, coming out of the non-qualified position. He went on to win 3 more times in that category. So Blaine and his family feels that, hey, if they're going to win in Top Fuel Eliminator, might as well win their first here at Gainesville, just like they did in the Top Alcohol class.
They are so used to having that #1 on their wing in alcohol dragster competition that it's a little unique for them not. Scott KALITTA for the first time wears the #1. Whoa, what a terrific drag race. It is going to be Larry Dixon up against Blaine Johnson in the final round. Johnson maybe with some motor problems, but he'll sacrifice a few pistons to pick up the cash in the final round berth.
Nothing like going to a racetrack that you feel good at. It gives you all kinds of morale and confidence and everything else, and it's working for Blaine Johnson here today in Gainesville. Things are not perfect with the motor, though. As he gets down the racetrack, he starts dropping cylinders. Take a look at the margin of victory calculations. Notice that the better reaction time made the difference for Johnson. 0.008 of a second was the difference. He's at the far end. He'll match up with Larry Dixon. He's talking to Steve right now.
Let's see, I like the scenario so far. You're going to your first ever final, and you did it on a hole shot.
All right. Well, it's finally coming around, having those good reaction times out there. I don't know what we ran or anything, but, going to the final is all it takes right now.
You ran a 483, but it was a little ugly. A lot of stuff coming out of the pipes.
Yeah, it seemed real soft out there. I think the clutch took a little too long to lock up, and we're just trying to soften it up a little bit to get down this track today.
Going to be a great final. 2 young, budding stars. Okay, Alderman and Pike. What do you think, Ralph?
Boy, we've seen the Wayne County cars really struggle a little bit here today, Steve. And Mark Pauk is at the top of his game. And if he really wants to get Alderman, he's going to have to weld him at the lights.
Knock. Mark Pauk's performance falling off to a 7:14. He'd have beat Darrell Alderman. Alderman was a little lazy off the line, but his 7:03, 196 makes him the Gators champ.
The Summit car did just what it needed. A 4:63 reaction time was better than the sleepy 5:02 of Alderman. But boy, does that Wayne County Dodge have a lot of get up and go. At the far end of the racetrack, it hit stride as you see Pauk's car hazing up the tires a little bit. A 7:03 at 196 miles an hour gets the 13th qualifier of victory at the Gatornationals and a chance to talk to Steve.
Well, Mom and Pop Alderman, your bouncing baby boy did good at the Gators. 7:03.
Yeah, you know, I think it would have been a little quicker, but it went left with me. It hooked harder. And Steve, I'd like to dedicate this race to Mike Moat and David Hutchins, his father, from back in Fairfield, Illinois. As a matter of fact, all the fine folks from Fairfield, Illinois.
Well said.
Well, you hear the whine of the blowers. The nitro cars are up next as our two Pro Stock finalists shake hands. There's the final adjustments being made as they get ready to lower the body and let John Force, who's going to match up with Dean Scusa, get set for their burnouts.
Both of these teams had trouble between rounds. Force more than Scusa. In fact, they just got into the lanes in time to make the show. The crowd loving it as John Force turns the Castrol GTX Pontiac into a moving fog bank. Did everything but turn on the wind light for him. But you know, Ralph, I think there's some method to that madness burnout. I know they've got a brand new clutch in that thing, 4-disc, and I think Austin told him go out and abuse this thing a little bit. It's going to need it to slip.
Well, that was Burnout 101, and Force just aced the final exam on that one. But you're right, they are the crew that have the most brain power, I guess what you want to say, when it comes to dialing in one of these cars. All the computers and everything else back in Force's trailer, and Coyle has been all over that thing, and they, I think, Steve, are the ones closest to having the clutch dialed in.
And that puts so much pressure when you're racing a guy like Austin Coyle here. Let's face it, the crew chiefs race the crew chiefs. It's not just driver versus driver. And that puts a lot on the shoulders of Lance Larson, who's knocked around this course for a lot of years. And it's really the first time that he's had the tiller of a first-rate automobile with a team that has some resources and trust him to do his job. Body's still up on Force's car. Now it comes down. This is the funny car final. John Force qualified number 1, set a track record of 301. Can he win and extend his Winston points lead? A tremendous job by both crews, but John Force has won his 44th NHRA national event at 5:16, 291. Scusa, hey, he was in there, 5:32.58.
Well, the clutch really was dialed in properly for Force. You'll see the clutch dust kick up out of the back of the Castrol car as it does out of Scusa's machine, but Force produced the best funny car performance in eliminations today at the Gatornationals as he posts a 5:16, 291-mile-an-hour effort, and that was just too much for Dean Scusa, and it gives Force his 4th consecutive Gators win, Steve.
John Force, you got your Winston points lead back.
It's a great feeling. It's fun racing a kid like Scusa. He's got a lot of heart, but my old Pontiac, she romped out there, and that'll keep Castrol, Jolly Rancher, Craftsman, all the boys happy. She ran good. We struggled all through the rounds. Clutch was coming out again. I didn't think she was going to make it, but we're okay.
It's time for the Top Fuel final. Blaine Johnson versus Larry Dixon. And you know, Ralph, remember you're open about all the 300-mile-an-hour runs? I've been adding this up. And if either of these drivers, win or lose, goes 300, that will be the 300th time it's been done, and it all started right here.
And that is a magic number. Nice thing to have on the mantle, knowing that you're number 300 to run 300.
Well, what Don the Snake Prudhomme would really like, as would the Johnson family, is this Gatornationals victory. For Prudhomme, it would mean his driver, Larry Dixon, extends his current Winston points lead. And for Blaine Johnson, it would mean they have finally broken through their 2nd year of Top Fuel competition. There is the Snake. Before the run, he had a very quiet yet intense chat with Larry Dixon. Doesn't really tell him what to do, just tells him what he may experience. And he is totally supportive of Dixon. If he makes a mistake, it's, hey, I did that 1,000 times, kid. That's all raw fuel as they go to the high side. Prudhomme more nervous, he tells me, on the starting line than he ever was as a driver.
And this will be a very tough run for both drivers, Steve. The sun is directly behind him. Puts a big glare on the light. It's going to be tough to see him.
from Larry Dixon. 302 miles an hour. More importantly, he wins the McDonald Gatornationals at 4.73 seconds. That's close to low elapsed time of the entire event.
The Miller Genuine Draft crew did a tremendous job in dialing this car in, and Larry Dixon just punched the go pedal and drove it to the far end. You see the left wheel torque up on him as he left the line, but watch the far lane. Blaine Johnson backpedals, blows the motor as he tries to fight for traction. 473, 302. Larry Dixon gets win number 2.
No professional driver bats 500%, but this young man has 2 for 4.
Thanks a lot. You know, what can I say? Wes Cerny, the whole Miller team did a hell of a job, and I'm just getting to drive the car. You know, Snake, he's helping so much. And
473 at over 300.
Thank you. That's great to hear, you know. I mean, if it wasn't for Wins, Pure Later, GMC trucks, and the rest of the guys here, I wouldn't be able to do it, you know. Thanks.
Top fuel points, it's all Larry Dixon right now. The reigning champion, Scott KALITTA, sits back in 3rd, and Eddie Hill's in 5th. In funny car, it's John Force on top, and Hoffman and Pedregon still trying to dethrone him, sit 2nd and 3rd. In the Pro Stock division, it's the Wayne County Dodges on top, and at the bottom end, Jerry ECKMAN getting his 95 program together in 5th.
And down at the far end, a nice moment between Larry Dixon and Blaine Johnson. American Sports Cavalcade coverage of the 1995 McDonald's Gatornationals has been a production of Diamond P Sports in association with the Nashville Network.